Hey guys, it's me again. Spent the last 5 minutes or so in a sort of a stunned silence, just dreading trying to record the video, thinking about. I was like having my 8 Mile moment. You know what I mean? It's funny. It's like a sort of toned down version of stage fright you get when you try to make videos like this. If you haven't done it before, I would recommend you give it a crack, and you'll see what I'm saying. First thing that gets you is the fear, and then the second is the self consciousness of watching it back. I find that kind of dislike of your own voice. I think that's something I've heard everyone I've talked to about it experiences this, but it actually goes away. That's the good news. So today I want to talk about the non-linearity of human energy. And I think that's perhaps too much of an obscure and weird title. So I think I'm going to call the video something like Humans Aren't Machines. I could call it Humans or Are Humans Machines with a question mark, but I'm pretty sure we're not. And I'm going to talk about why that particular misconception seems to happen and what the consequences are. So unlike all my videos up to this point, I took some notes. There's almost nothing on this piece of paper. I'm still experimenting with the degree to which I should use notes, scripts, etc. However, again, I think this video is just manageable enough that I can more or less deal with this particular magnitude of subject without having to be constantly referring back to notes or a script. So I want to start this off by saying that I've been addicted to a lot of stuff in my time, and I think a lot of people identify as being addicts, and I think I have come to identify as being an addict for better or worse. And one of the interesting things that happens when you really come to grips with the concept of being addicted to things is that you realize that almost everyone is addicted to things, and they are mostly in denial about it. Now, you can say this is a framing issue. It's a little bit like when people smoke cigarettes and some people say, oh yeah, well, I could quit anytime I want, but I just like, whatever. And now we have anathematized cigarettes to the point where there's not a lot of those kind of people left. Because it's sort of something that you wouldn't do just for fun anymore. But we still have lots of things that are more or less socially acceptable. And so there's still, you can still run the gamut of addictions and remain within the kind of social Overton window of what's acceptable. So for me at the moment, it's coffee. And it's the case for a lot of former alcoholics, I find. I'm not in AA, but it's a noticeable preponderance of people who are in AA love coffee. AA is Alcoholics Anonymous, for anyone who didn't happen to know that. So being addicted to coffee is an interesting phenomenon because it really can get you high, but once it gets you noticeably high, it's very unpleasant. Most people would agree on that. So there's a temptation to have more cups of coffee than you should, and it gets you to this point where you're jittering, shaking. I'm sure most people have experienced this because, again, coffee is socially acceptable enough and also gets you high enough. There's that balance, which I should coin a term for, that kind of ratio of socially acceptable to the degree to which it gets you high. It kind of has that enough that most people have gotten high on coffee at some point. And it's the reason I find that interesting, this idea of getting high on coffee, is because whenever society, whenever there's a preponderance of people in society who get high on something a lot, like coffee, alcohol, weed, exercise, sex, social media, I'm sure the list goes on and on. Well, there tends to be a set of narratives around what exactly that does for you. So alcohol, classic example, you know, liquid courage. People use it to sort of take the edge off, like when they need to relax at the end of the day. And again, these are not objectively the effects of alcohol. Any listing of the effects of alcohol always looks pretty abysmal, you know. The sort of cold light of day effect of it. It's things like slowed reaction times, slurred speech, inability to enter REM sleep. Like, it's just really bad. It's a very stinky laundry list of things. But the social narratives lend a buoyancy to the substance, or a kind of redemptive quality to the substance, in addition to whatever intoxication you experience, like whatever good feeling you get from the substance. But that's really bolstered by the narrative, right? And so coffee is really no exception. I think the narrative around coffee is something like that it gives you the energy you need to get through the day. If there was a kind of big coffee catchphrase, I think that would be it. And, you know, needless to say, big coffee doesn't have a catchphrase because everyone is hooked on the stuff. Sorry, I'll just turn the notifications off on my phone. So, so is that true though? You know, does coffee give you energy? Well, maybe. And, you know, answering that question thoroughly is sort of beyond the scope of this video, but the reason that I think it's extremely pertinent to the topic of this video, and why I kind of need to do this preface, is because the nature of human energy is very strange. It's not linear. So what do I mean by that? It's not linear. Okay. I'm going to refer back to my notes there. Okay, so my first line of notes says, addicted to coffee. We've done that one. The matrix battery. Okay, this is very good. So the notes have helped me, I hope, I think. Now, so there was a film released in the 90s, which I'm sure many of you will be aware of and have probably seen, called The Matrix. And it was a hugely influential film, both in terms of its effect on cinema and cinematography, but also the effect on the culture and the way that the culture thinks about reality and what we know about reality. So simulation theory, you know, a lot of people kind of have this idea that maybe we live in a simulation. And I think it's fair to say that The Matrix popularized that in the public imagination. And we are going to talk about that in a different video that I'm working on called Does God Do Math? Which will be kind of a spiritual counterpart to this one. But there's a moment in The Matrix where the main character, Neo, is being given this exposition by the sort of Virgil type character, Morpheus. So Morpheus is sort of giving him a guided tour of the world outside the simulation, if you like, and what happened to the world. So he's saying, look, look, Neo, if you want to know why humans are in a simulation, he holds up this I think it's a Duracell battery, and he says, we're just batteries to them, basically. And there was much critique at the time that doesn't make sense, right? For a lot of reasons, but humans don't generate energy; we use energy, right? And again, see my video Modern Alchemy even more on that. But so the idea that we're a battery doesn't make a lot of sense, because they would have to put more energy in than they would be getting out. And given that the premise is that there's no sunlight, it's like, well, where are they getting the energy from, right? Not from the sun like we do at the moment with our vegetables and carnations. But originally, apparently, this is the way the story goes, it was actually supposed to be that human beings were being harvested by the machines for their processing power. But that was considered to be too obscure and too scary of an idea. So it's even like, it's both, people wouldn't understand it, and if they did understand it, it would be too scary of a concept because it's too plausible, I suppose. That's how the story goes. But I want to just point out that this is like, that this idea of human beings as batteries is actually one that most of us hold, and it's equally ridiculous as it is in the Matrix. So let's talk about that. So when Morpheus says, look, Neo, we're just batteries, he's not anthropomorphizing, but he's actually doing the opposite. So anthropomorphism is something that we've probably all heard of, which is the human tendency for the projection of human attributes onto the outside world in some way. And it's considered to be a psychological bias, right? It's something that scientists have to be constantly bearing in mind because it leads humans to make mistakes about the nature of reality. And we see this in ancient religion all the time, where maybe you look at the sun and you go, oh, look, that sun must be a person, kind of. So that sun is Apollo, or that sun is Ra, or whatever. And from a modern perspective, we say, no, the sun is not a person in any way, shape, or form. It's a mistake to think of the sun as being a person, right? And that's it. It's probably even the case all the way down to like very human-like things, like monkeys, for example. If you're a scientist and you're like, hey, monkeys are really just like people, it's like, yeah, don't put that in your research paper. Like, maybe you can put that in the conclusions about how they have some objective similarities, but don't be like, I think monkeys are really just like people. It's like, no, just save that for, when you have to do your pop science communication thing on some podcast. When you're talking to the plebs, say that, but don't put that in your peer-reviewed journal because it's showing that you have this psychological bias that can lead you to making mistakes about the way monkeys really are. And what Morpheus is doing is the opposite. He's saying, humans are really just like batteries. And of course, he's not simplifying it that much. But I think there should be a word for this, because I think this is something that humans do now a lot. Especially with the advent of computers. I experienced this a lot when I was studying psychology, is just imagining that we are on some level computers, or that like brains are computers now. But of course, brains aren't computers. And you can see that you're going to have the same set of problems are going to come up if you just keep hard-headedly assuming that brains are like computers or humans are like computers, or that humans are like any machine, right? That's fundamentally a mistake you're making. And again, it might yield some insights. Like, it's not like humans aren't like machines in every conceivable way. There are ways in which we can really safely say that we are like machines. But the more you lean into that, the more you get this mistaken idea of what human beings are. And that is something that I think fuels the narrative around coffee as a source of energy. Because, so I turned off the notifications on this before, right? This machine, a smartphone, at least at the time of my making this video, is so prevalent. It's almost unimaginable that most people could live, or that anyone could live without a smartphone in the 21st century. It's just something you have. And really all around the world at this point. Like my mom visited Bhutan not that long ago, and she was telling me about how all of the monks were on their phones, right? And so, you know, given that, I think it's fair to say that we actually transmit some of the properties, we attribute some of the properties of the phone onto ourselves. So how does this relate to energy? Well, think about a phone. Our phone has a battery, and that battery has to be charged, and it takes a while for it to charge. And then that battery is full. Then once it's fully charged, it's a full battery, and then it starts to drain down. And so it's on an entropic trajectory, from full charge to no charge, and the only thing that can interrupt that is getting it being plugged in. And if we do anything too exhaustive of its resources, then it drains even more quickly, right? So the best that we can hope to do if we want to save the battery life is either charge it or conserve it. And I think somewhere along the lines, we've picked up the idea, and this is really dangerous, that humans work this way. And again, it's not that science is saying this. Like, there are certainly science, like I remember the idea that humans had a set amount of willpower and that it was like draining down over the day. That was a prevalent view in psychology for many of the years that I was being educated, but I think it's kind of fallen out of favor now. But you don't need science to say something for people to start thinking that something is the case. And so, you know, what happens when you apply that to a human being? Well, we think of ourselves as being charged up by having a sleep. So we think about sleep as being like the battery charging process. And then we wake up, and then starts going, it starts going down, until we get so tired that we effectively have a dead battery, and we have to sleep again. And we also have this idea that if we do anything if we exert ourselves too much, then we're going to drain the battery more quickly. And we also have the idea that at the end of the day, when the battery's really low, we can't do like really intense stuff that we would be able to do in the morning. Now, okay, there's probably a grain of truth to all of those things. Like, It's not to say that these are like completely the wrong-headed way of thinking. But I'm going to make a dog analogy in my Does God Do Math video as well. I'm going to do a dog analogy here. Think about when, if you have a dog, right? I've got Chimbles here, as you can probably see. So Chimbles at the moment is more or less inert. He's not, he's happy because he's had his walk. He doesn't think he's going to get another one soon. He's had his food. So he's reached a point, what they call in biology, as I recall, homeostasis. So, you know, it's like when a lizard's just sitting there on a twig. It's just like, what's up? I'm good. I'm hanging out. You know, I don't have to do anything. I'm not like trying to go here, go there. I'm just chilling. So, well, what can we say about his energy level, Jude, right now? Chimbles, right? Does he have a lot of energy? It doesn't look like it. Is he charging up? Like, is his battery charging? I don't think so. He's kind of just, I mean, he's resting, yeah, but, you know, if he thought that a walk was going to happen, when he'd perk up and his energy level would skyrocket. And when I took him for that walk, he'd have more energy then than he appears to have now, right? He would be energized from the experience. And this is really how human beings work as well, especially with physical exercise. It gives you energy. It doesn't take energy away. And of course, I'm not talking about in a caloric sense. But we're not really thinking of the battery in a caloric sense. We're thinking of the battery in terms of the degree to which we can basically be fucked doing things. And so you can see why that's sort of convenient that that we would think of ourselves as batteries in that way, because it gives us a convenient excuse to not really do much. But we can be energized by things that aren't just sleep, and that also aren't just like conserving the battery life, like watching television or whatever. We can actually be energized by doing things physically, like in the case of going for a walk, going to the gym or whatever, or mentally or arguably spiritually, like in the case of the video I'm making now, or like meditation or something like that. So again, look out for that. I'm going to make a video about religious technologies at some point as well, because it is a technology, right? Meditation is a technology, and it wasn't a technology invented by science. So given that we can see that there's this fallacy, you can probably see how coffee, the narrative about it is very seductive, because it corroborates our worst fear that we don't have the energy on our own, and so we need to import the energy from outside of ourselves using something other than sleep, because we can't sleep, right? Because we have shit to do. Everyone's got shit to do, right? And it feels like everyone's always got shit to do, and they've always got more and more shit to do. Like, you can't just take a nap instead of taking your kids to school or whatever. So what are you going to do? And that's where coffee becomes this kind of hook, right? It puts you on edge, like alert, in this way that gives you the impression that you've been given more energy. And again, in a way you have, but it's not energy that you couldn't have garnered for yourself using more sustainable means. Because the problem with coffee, as we all know, is that it's a spike. That's why it's a problem for me. It's not that I get too high on it, although I sometimes do. It's not that I take issue with the feeling of being high on it. And we all know it doesn't ruin your ability to function as a human being like so many other drugs do. And indeed, coffee lovers like myself would say, oh, well, I feel that I'm more capable of doing X, Y, or Z while I'm on it. But there's a price to be paid. There's always a price to be paid. Whenever you're playing the game of neurochemistry, it's some kind of zero-sum game is going on. You're losing, wherever you're gaining, you're losing something else elsewhere. And, that's a temporal affair in the case of coffee. You sink down, you spike, and then you sink even further down than you would have if you didn't have the coffee. And that feeling of losing energy is in perfect concordance with our misconception of ourselves as a battery. So that feeling that it's sinking down, I think we don't attribute that to the coffee. We attribute that to our own, the frailty of our own energy systems. And so I think I'm going to leave it there because, again, 26 and a half minutes, who the actual fuck is watching this? But if you are, I hope you've learned something, because I do think this is actually one of those things that could really help somebody. So if you got something out of it, please do let me know. Subscribe to the channel. I just hit 10 subscribers, so I'm going to have a 10 subscriber special at some point. No idea what that's going to look like, but it should be fun and or funny. And I wish you all the best. I hope you guys have a lovely day or night or both. Why not have both? Farewell.